Welcome to our 24th in a continuing series on the book of Shmuel, or Samuel, and the founding of Jewish monarchy. Episode 24, Wherever I May Roam. In chapters 21 and 22, David goes on the lam. We follow the refugee who would be king to Nov, and then the Plishti city of Gath, wondering why David would choose this worst possible location for which to flee. Luckily, the king of the Plishtim has a good sense of humor about the situation. However, when Doeg, here in the role of Haman, informs Shaul of David's access to divine messages, something which plays upon the king's paranoid insecurities, then a Churban ensues. All this and more. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the podcast and will consider sharing it with others.
On the road. So when last we left our fearless heroes, David and Yonatan had a parting of the ways. So that was the end of chapter 20. Chapter 21 starts off as follows. Vayakam vayelech v'Yonatan ba'ha'ir. So they part ways, right? David went his way, Yonatan went back to the city, and now David is left on his own. And this is how he's going to be basically for the rest of the book. So Vayavo David Nova el Achimelech HaKohen. So David, and I should really pull out the map. This is going to make a lot more sense if you can see what everything is.
Is it a Jewish map?
It's a Jewish map. So it's here somewhere. Shimmy, you might be able to find this online.
Okay.
If you Google like David's travel, there you go.
Right now.
Okay, so you can take this and pass this around. So David starts off. Let's do it like this. David starts off here in Givat Shaul, right? That's where Shaul's, we'll say, his kingdom is. That's his castle. Now he goes from there down to Nov, which is just like a hop, skip, and a jump. He's going to go from Nov to Gath, and then from Gath to Adulam over here, and then he'll make some more his way around the country. But one of the things we're going to have to figure out is why he goes where he goes. So Vayavo David Nova el Achimelech HaKohen. So David goes from, I guess, somewhere in the forest that's near Givat Shaul, down to Nov. And there he meets this guy, Achimelech the Kohen. Vayecharad Achimelech likrat David, and Achimelech is kind of freaking out when David shows up in town, which we'll try to figure out why he would be afraid of David being in town. Remember, David is a celebrity. David is the ultimate warrior. He has vanquished the Plishtim. Everybody loves him. They sing songs about him. So you've got a hero coming into town. Vayomer lo, and Achimelech says to David, Madua ata levadecha v'ish ein itach. Okay, there's something up, because you're not going to get the hero of the Jewish people without some sort of entourage. Usually he's the head of a legion of 3,000 people. He's not going to just show up all by himself, and we're going to see it's even weirder how he shows up. Vayomer David l'Achimelech HaKohen HaMelech tzivani davar. So I'm on like a secret mission over here. The king commanded me this thing. Vayomer Elai ish al yedamu ma et hadavar asher anochi sholechacha v'asher tzivisicha v'asanarim yodati el makom ploni almoni. So the king ordered me on this mission. No one can know about what's going on. I'm sending you with these strict orders. I don't have any of the usual people that I keep around with me, and I have to go to Ploni Almoni, is like random nameless place that I can't even tell you about because I'll have to kill you if I tell you. One of the things that we get all throughout, interspersed in this in Shmuel Aleph, are references to Rus. So here we've got Ploni Almoni, which is a rare thing. You don't get in Tanakh reference to Ploni Almoni, which we also had when we did Megillas Rus. And again, Rus obviously being the progenitor of David. V'ata ma yesh tachas yadecha. What do you have in your hands? Chamisha lechem tna biyadi o hanimsa. Give me whatever you got. You got bread. I need some bread. Whatever's lying around. I need you to help me because I'm basically undercover. I'm starving and I couldn't take anything with me.
Red stuff.
Right. Vayan hakohen et David vayomer ein lechem chol el tachas yadi. I don't have any like regular person bread. Ki'im lechem kodesh. I've got the lechem apanim. Yesh. So im nishmru anarim ach misha. But you got to make sure that you're tahor, right? First of all, I shouldn't be giving this to you at all. But if you're all tameh from being with a woman, then it's even worse. So at least tell me that like you're not in a state of tumah. Right. Vayan David es hakohen vayomer lo. And David responds and says, Ki im isha atzura lanu kitmol shel. Don't worry about it. We haven't been with any of the women for several days. But seisi veyu klei hanarim kodesh, and all the stuff that we've got, all of our armor is sanctified. V'hu derech chol. V'av ki hayom mikdash b'kli. And the way that I went was derech chol was unconsecrated, but the food that you have, even if it's holy, you can put it in the kalim that I brought with me. Vayitein lo hakohen kodesh. So Achimelech is like, okay, that sounds reasonable. Here, have some of the lechem apanim. Ki lo hayasham lechem ki im lechem apanim hamsurim lifnei Adonai lasum lechem chom b'yom hilak cho. And the bread has already. So there's like two stages of kodesh. There's when you bring the lechem apanim on the table, and then after it's finished being there for the week, you take it off of the table. So now it's not as kodesh. It's supposed to be eaten by kohanim, but you're not really over me'ilah. Maybe if you have this bread afterwards, certainly if David is like fearing for his life, it's less of a halachic question, we'll say. So, but when he takes the bread off of the table, it's still warm. That's one of the nisim that the Gemara talks about, that the lechem apanim would stay fresh the entire time. Okay, so just a quick summary of what we've seen so far. David shows up at Nov, I guess because it's close to where he was, and he has no food with it. Right? I think it's the Medrash that talks about like the entire fiasco that we're about to see, where the city of Nov gets wiped out, could have been averted if Yonatan had given David like a couple of loaves of bread on his way. Then none of this would have happened. So David and Yonatan part ways, and David has nothing with him, even though he knew he was going to be parting ways with Yonatan after their whole arrow, symbolism thing. But he comes basically with not a penny in his pocket to Nov, and he's got to take whatever he can get. So it seems like what he can get is some lechem apanim. Yes, so far so good.
Very weird.
Weird.
Yeah. Is Nov on here?
Nov is should be right below. It's really small. There's it's right above Yerushalayim. See Nov, and then Yerushalayim is right below it.
It says Nov. Oh, there it says Nov.
Yeah.
Very small. Okay. I figured out to close to Yerushalayim.
Yeah, it is close to Yerushalayim. Okay. Now we introduce the problem. Visham ish me'avdei Shaul, and there is this servant of Shaul there. Vayom hahu, he happens to be there on that day. Ne'atzar lifnei Adonai, and he's been. They have here, what's that? Stopped, detained before God. Ushmo Doeg, and his name is Doeg. How would you translate worry? Right? He brings the worry, and he is Ha'adomi. He is the Edomite. Abir Haroim Asher LaShaul, and he is the chief herdsman of Shaul. So right now, if we were taking an inventory of the official officers that we have in Shaul's cabinet, all we know of is Abner is the head of the army, and Doeg is the head of the sheep. That's it. That's like all he's got in his.
Sort of the.
David's like one of the musicians, maybe like the arm bearer. He carries the armor, but we don't have chieftains of anything else. Right, there's no like head of, I don't know, security or food, or he's got a very small cabinet.
Also a red dude.
Right. Okay. So we can do it now, or we can do it at the end. But I want to talk about Doeg in detail. Maybe let's get to the end and see a little bit more about him. So he is the chief herdsman, and he's happens to be there when all of this conversation between David and Achimelech is going down. Vayomer David la'Achimelech. V'in yesh po tachas yadecha chanis o charev. You have any weapons over here, like maybe a spear? Spears seem to be David's thing, or maybe a sword. Ki gam charbi v'gam keli lo lakachti b'yadi. I didn't have time to stop and take any of my armor with me. No weapons, nothing. Ki hayad davar hamelech nachutz, because this mission that I'm on, this phony mission, is very, very urgent. Vayomer HaKohen, well, we got nothing here except the cherev Goliath ha-Plishti asher hikisa be'emek ha'ela hinehi letusha b'simla acharei ha'ifod. So we've got one like giant oversized sword of Goliath that, remember you killed that dude? Well, it's here behind the ephod. We keep it, for viewing purposes. I guess it's important to point out, Nov is essentially the Mishkan reconstituted, right? Shiloh was destroyed at the beginning of this book, and the Aron went first into exile, and then it's sitting out in someone's house. The rest of the Mishkan has been reconstituted in Nov, so that's why there's the Lechem upon him there. That's why we have the ephod there. We're going to see more about whether or not the Urim V'Tumim was there, but Nov, for all intents and purposes, in our brain space right now, is the Mishkan. Okay, so if you're going to deposit a trophy of having bested the Plishtim, you're going to do it in the sanctuary, right? The most famous place where everyone's going to come see it.
According to the opinion that non-Jews cannot impart corpse tuma.
Well, it's a sword.
Yeah, but David HaMelech chopped off Goliath's head with it. Therefore, if non-Jews
okay, so they put it in the mikvah. I don't know.
I'm just saying, can you do that?
It's a fair question. I don't know. Yeah, you can kasher, right? You stick it in the ground, and okay.
You're gonna do neitza with Goliath's sword.
Okay. So it's there, wrapped up in a cloth behind the ephod. Im osati kach lecha kach. If that's what you want, help yourself. We don't have any swords here. This is the sanctuary. This is where
this is
the priests are.
Peace.
Right, exactly.
Except for this giant sword.
Right. It kind of, well, it depends whether or not you believe there's a mizbeach there. If there is, then there's knives to shech korbanos. But
right.
okay. Well,
but I'm just saying, like, it almost sounds like a Monty Python sketch. This is the sanctuary of peace, except for the giant sword. Like.
Vayomer David, Ein kamoha. There's none like this sword. That's an amazing thing. Tnena li, I would like it. Please give it to me. Vayagam David vayivarach bayom hahu mipnei Shaul, and David gets up and flees from before Shaul. Vayomer el vayavo, el Achish melech Gath, and he comes to Achish, who, if you look into Hilm, we have like kind of the cross pollination there, prakim into Hilm where David talks about this same incident. He refers to him as Avimelech. That's because Avimelech is sort of the standard name for Plishti kings, the same way Paro is the name for Egyptian kings. But his actual name is Achish, the king of Gath. Okay, so if we go back to our handy dandy map over here, you will see that David did a very weird thing. Givat Shaul over here, Nov right down there, and then Gath is way over here. He goes cross country. The reason that's weird is, well, there's a couple of reasons. One is, where's David from? Where's David from?
Shiloh.
Beit Lechem.
Beis Lechem, right? Beis Lechem is, boom, really close to where David is right now, in Nov. Okay? Who lives in Gath?
Goliath. Well, the Plishtim.
The Plishtim, right?
Right. Incidentally, are we going to comment at all on Achimelech versus Avimelech? Like that connected?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, hey, brother of the king,
Right.
my father the king.
That's fair.
Saying,
I don't know. We will get back to Achimelech. But what David does right now in his travel is very hard to understand. First of all, he's leaving the Jewish world and entering the non-Jewish world. If he feels like he needs to flee from Shaul because he's assuming Shaul is chasing him, I would go first to Beis Lechem, right?
Maybe just set up guards. Maybe he's worried they're going to intercept him.
Maybe, but let's put it into contrast. Who are the least likely people to welcome David in the entire planet?
His family?
No. Shaul and the Plishtim. Why the Plishtim?
David's
David's made a living killing the Plishtim. Now, if you're going to go to, there's a strategy here, right? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. So you want to go to the non-Jew to protect you from the Jew who's after you. Okay, I buy that. But then
Right.
right
Go
below
to the
where
Mexicans, go
Go-
to the Americans,
go-
go to the French. Like don't go to the dudes you've just been killing.
right. So if you look on the map, right below Nov is Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim at this point,
Don't
we
go
said
to the
earlier,
French, by the way.
is run by the Yevusi. We even mentioned after David killed Goliath, so he brought some stuff to Yerushalayim, and we said that was like a token gift that he gave the Yevusi to say, like, look, we both hate the Plishtim, so here's a trophy, and we could be friends. So if you want to go, if the enemy of my enemy is my friend, then go to an enemy who's kind of your friend. Go to the Yevusi in Yerushalayim. If you have to go for whatever cockamamie reason, you have to go to the Plishtim. There's a closer city than Gath. You can go to Ekron. Boom. Ekron is closer than Gath. So he's going out of his way after getting the sword of the Plishti guy that he killed. That's the only thing he has with him, and it's clearly very identifiable, right? It's Goliath's sword. He's not just getting a random Plishti sword. He's getting the famous Plishti sword, and then he's bringing it to the town of the Plishti that he killed, right? Do we understand why this is a very bad strategy?
Well, it suggests cojones of steel.
Well, but okay, so how could it be a good strategy? Let's turn it around.
I think the technical term is called a refuge in audacity.
I haven't heard that.
Okay.
Okay.
Which is like, you do something that is so outrageous that people just like it short circuits them and they're not even gonna they're just not prepared for it.
Okay.
It's like, like I mean there's movies and stuff lahavdil where they need to cause someone to escape from like a heavily guarded place and they're like, let's just walk out. And we'll make a big noise and we'll
Draw
embarrass
attention.
Ourselves in public,
Right.
but we'll try to draw attention to ourselves. And nobody would ever expect that this high security place that people are just gonna
Right.
traipse on out of here.
Okay.
Right? Let's take a refuge in audacity. Let's just go
Totally unexpected.
chutzpah, extreme chutzpah.
Right. Okay. So let's see how it plays out, and then maybe we can understand why he did it. Okay. Pasuk 11. Vayakam David. We did that. He goes to Achish Melech Gath. Vayomru Avdei Achish Elav. And he gets exactly the reception you would expect. Hello, Zed David Melech Haaretz. Isn't this David like the king of the Jews? Hello, Lazeh Yanu b'Mecholot. You know what they sing about this guy? Lemor Hikashul ba'alafav David b'Rivotav. They have a song about how many Plishtim he kills. That Shaul kills 1,000 Plishtim and he kills 10,000. This is the guy? Vayasam David es hadvarim ha'ela bilvavo. And David gets really worried about this, is how they translate it. He places these words in his heart. Vayiram Me'od, and he freaks out. Mipnei Achish Melech Gath, because of Achish, the king of Gath. So he gets exactly the reception that you would expect. David seems to have not expected that reception and is very concerned. So what do you do if you're David and you're in the Plishti territory and they all want to kill you? Vishanois tamo be'enehem. So he essentially fakes insanity. V'itholel bi'adam. Shanos tamo means like he changes his good sense. V'itholel bi'adam, he acts mad. Vayitav al dalsos hashar, and he starts scratching on the doorposts. Vayored riro el zikano, and he lets his spit dribble down his beard. Vayomer Achish elavadav, and this is one of the best lines in Tanakh. So Achish says to the people in his court, Hine tir'u ish mishtageya. You see this crazy dude? Lama taviu oso elai. Why would you bring him to me? Chaser mishuga imani. Am I lacking? Do I not have enough crazy people? Right. This is like Lahavdil, the Spaceballs, when he finds out that he's surrounded by, we'll call them madmen. He's like, "Are you all? Keep firing, madmen!" He realizes that this is just ridiculous. Why would I keep this guy here? I don't have enough crazy people that you had to bring one more to act crazy around me. That this one should also enter my house. This is the end of the chapter, and the assumption is that they say, okay, look, he's crazy. We might as well leave him alone, and that's where the next passage will just start the beginning of 22 before we go back. Vayelech David misham v'malet et marad adulam, and he goes from there to adulam v'yishmo achav v'chol beit aviv v'yerdu elav shama, and all of his father's house join up with him there in the forest of Adulam. Okay, so why would David do what he just did? Any takers? Okay, so Rashi brings the medrash that he thought he was going to be greeted as a hero. Why? So when the Jews fought the Plishtim, the agreement was, we'll send out our best guy, you send out your best guy, whoever wins will all become his servants. So David shows up and he's got the sword and he's like, hey, you're all supposed to be my servants. If any place that he should go to the place where they agreed to be his servants. And the advisors tell the king, hey, he's got a point. You should take off your crown and go be subject to David. When the king hears that, he's like, whoa, 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 that's not cool. I'm not signing up for that. Let's go kill him. Once David sees that, you know what, they're not going to honor their agreement, he thought, okay, well, like the idea of a mercenary for hire is very common in the ancient world. There's no loyalties. If you can bring on your enemy's leading, army guy, if he wants to switch sides, so then you bird in the hand, right? Like, great, so sign him up. But if you have to do that at the expense of your crown, that's a bridge too far for Achish. So then the question becomes, okay, I buy that, then kill him, right? You've got him in your hand. Like you don't put him in some like slowly revolving trap that he can easily. Why would you not just kill him?
Right.
So the only answer I can give you for that is the only fate that they can imagine that is worse than death is living with insanity. Meaning I could give him a good clean death and kill him in battle, or I could force him to live like a madman for the rest of his life. That's even worse. So we'll just let him do that. Right? That's essentially where this ends up. What that says about
Is it possible they were afraid of him with the dog? He had the sword and he was David.
He doesn't even seem to brandish the sword. He doesn't.
Yeah, but is it possible? No.
The way Achish responds to David being crazy seems more of like mockery than fear. I think.
No, yeah, for sure. That's what it played out.
In the first part.
You're saying his strategy was
he until he saw that, was he sure that he could beat David?
Right, David kills a lot of Plishtim.
Right, 10,000. Right.
Yeah, so it's maybe a little.
Right, like
exaggerated.
when it came time to marry his wife, he's just like, all right,
200 Plishtim.
200 Plishtim in the back, like, and Shaul asked for like 100.
Right.
So he just like kills 200 dudes like it's nothing.
Right.
So like maybe they're like, you know what? He's cool. Just leave him be. We don't want to tempt fate.
I mean, I guess if I was worried, then it says he's worried in his heart or whatever you said.
Yeah, maybe him being crazy is the bird in the hand. Like, you know what? He's out of the way.
Right.
He's not our problem.
Right. Don't mess with him.
So he didn't have the Tachan at that point, did he?
He didn't know. He didn't have the Tachan. He's afraid.
Right.
Yeah, he doesn't know that he can.
I gotta.
Yeah, he's putting himself in a dangerous situation. And Chazal say actually, David. One of the things that David didn't understand was the purpose of madness.
Right.
Especially, and this Chazal don't say, but I think we can reflect that back on what we've been reading in the book so far. Shaul is crazy. Right? Shaul is crazy, and David's been exposed to it. In fact, David is the guy who's supposed to play the music to stop him from being crazy. Right. So he knows intensely what craziness is all about, and he has to adopt that to survive. That's a very intense lesson for David of all people, to say the only way I can survive and deal with this king who's out to kill me. Now it's a king who's out to kill me because I put him up to it. I showed up here. Is for me to be the crazy one instead of the king being the crazy one.
I gotta ask the follow-up question.
Yeah.
Is Achish a complete moron? Like, 5 minutes ago, David's like, okay, guys, listen. We had made an agreement. You guys said to keep the agreement. Okay. And they're like, nah, dude, you're dead. Like, what are you doing here? You're a dead... Oh, he must be crazy now. Okay. Like well, he's faking, guys. Chop his head off. Right. Okay, he was just talking to me like a normal person 20 seconds ago.
Right.
Okay, why is this like, it's like the what's it called? Like he puts a mask in front of himself and is like, you can't see me.
Right.
It's like where did I go? I'm hiding behind a rock. Like it doesn't make any sense.
I hear you. I don't know. I can't give you a good answer for that. It's a very fair question. I don't have a good answer. Okay, let's try to knock out the next pair because it's pretty short.
We didn't really get so into the arrows and the Yonatan and
we did. We talked about that was divination.
I don't know. It just didn't sit right with me.
Didn't sit right. Okay.
The divination thing didn't sit right with me.
Okay. We can try to reopen the case.
Yeah.
Vayikabsu elav pasuk beis. Vayikabsu elav kol ish matzok v'chol ish asher lo nosal v'chol ish mar nefesh Vayar alehem lasar, and all basically all the desperados join him. Everybody who is in debt, who is desperate, they all join up with David in this forest, and he becomes the head of the bandits. This is literally like Robin Hood going on here. You'll
Or
see.
Rish Lakish.
Well, yeah, I guess. Vayu imo ka'arba meot ish, and he has 400 men with him. Why is that
That's the number
symbolic?
of married men.
Number of married men.
Except
Who else? Who else? Esav, right? David is the red dude, and now he has his 400 soldiers, just like Esav did when he came to see Yaakov. Vayelech David misham mitzpeh Moav, and now David's like, you know what? If I'm going to go to any enemy of the Jews, I might as well go to Moab because that's where my family's from. Vayomer el Melech Moab, and he says to the king of Moab, Yetzina avivi mi itchem. Let me leave my parents under witness protection with you. Ad asher eda ma yaseh li Elohim, until I figure out what God's plan is for me. V'yinachem et pnei Melech Moab, v'yeshu imo kol yemei ayos David b'mitzudah. And in fact, Moab, the king of Moab, lets them in the door. He basically
Because
harbors
of
them
his
until.
ancestry, or
Let's assume it's because of the ancestry,
or
and because
maybe they have like sacred hospitality rules, like
no, that we talked about Moab is like
Oh,
Sodom.
they're right.
They're sort of the opposite of hospitality. But the only other thing I would say to you is that if you have like the general of the Jews family in your back pocket, that's some protexia, right?
Right.
You don't have to worry about suddenly the wrath of the Jews is going to turn on Moab. Well, I've got David's family right here,
right.
under the
They're-
gun.
They're like a hostage.
Right. Vayomer Gad Hanavi, and suddenly there is a prophet, and it's not Shmuel. We get no sort of lead up to this prophet, but Gad Hanavi is with David, and he tells him, Lo teshev mitzudah, don't hang out in your fortress over here in Adulam. Lechu basa lecha Eretz Yehuda, go, and this is kind of just general good advice. Your tribe is Yehuda. Go hang out with the tribe of Yehuda. Vayelech David vayovo yar Chares, and he goes to the forest of Chares. Vayishma Shaul ki noda David, and Shaul hears that David has been located. Now, if you're Shaul, forgetting about the divine madness, what does this look like to you? If you just look objectively at what David has done since last he saw Shaul, he's conspired with Shaul's son. He ran away and joined the Plishtim. He's now assembled a little militia of bad people, right, to hang out with him, and he's now traveling to Yehuda, which has always
He
been sort
dropped
of
off his family by
right.
a foreign power.
David is definitely taking a posture that, from Shaul's perspective, looks like rebellion.
Right.
Does it not?
Yeah.
Okay, so Vayishma Shaul ki noda David v'anashim asher ito, v'Shaul yoshev b'giva tachat ha'eshel b'rama, and what has he got in his hand? V'chanito biyado. This is the spear that he's constantly trying to kill David with. V'chol avadav nitzavim alav, and he's got all of his officers with him, and Shaul blasts them.
This is the other part of the midrash, right?
What do you mean?
The one with why is there madness? This is part 2,
Okay.
and then we're gonna get part 3 shortly.
Okay. What's
The
part
one-
2?
Part 2 is with the hornet.
The hornet.
David HaMelech asks Hashem, why is there madness? Why is there hornets?
Oh, and the
And
spider web. Yeah.
And why
yeah,
is there spiders? Like,
Right.
those are the 3 things. And this is the least one known of those 3. Like, some midrashim, I think there's 2 versions of the midrash,
Uh-huh.
and one omits the hornet part.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why.
Okay, you'll have to tell us.
Yeah.
So, Vayomer Shaul lavadav hanitzavim alav. In case you didn't remember from the last pasuk that they're hanging out, standing up by him. Shimuna b'nei yimini. Shaul is paranoid, so he's surrounded himself only with people from Binyamin, and he says, "Look, guys, it's pretty clear that David has some sort of designs on the throne. So, I want to understand where your allegiances lie." Gam lekulchem yitain ben Yishai sadot ukramim lekulchem yasim sarei alafim sarei meot. You think Ben Yishai is going to give you whatever you want? If you think you can turn coat on me and he's going to give you some vineyards and make you the captain of the army? Ki kashartem kulchem alai v'engoles azni bichras beni im Ben Yishai v'en cholem mikem alai v'goles azni ki hekim beni es avdi alai laorev kayom hazeh. you're all you all have conspired against me. No one told me when David made a pact with my son, and no one is concerned for me. No one informs me when excuse me, when there's an ambush set for me, which is the case right now. That David is basically preparing to rebel. That's Shaul's expectation over here. Vayan Doeg Hadomi, and now we understand why we had to point out Doeg in the last parak, because he's going to lead Shaul down the path to destruction. V'hu nitzav al avdei Shaul, and just like the avdei Shaul are nitzavim, Doeg is nitzav by those avdei Shaul. Vayomer, and he says, Ra'isi is ben Yishai ba Nova el Achimelech ben Achituv. I have the inside scoop. You want to know what's going on? You want to know about the ambush? I will tell you what is happening behind your back. I will play right into all the paranoia that you have. I think this is where Chazal start to get the idea that Doeg is more than just a head shepherd, because otherwise, what is he doing over here? First of all, he's not a Benyamini. He's not from Benjamin. He's an Edomi. Either Edomi means he's not Jewish, or it means that he's a Jew living in Edom, which we can assume it means he's not from Benjamin. So he pipes up among all of the other. First of all, he's here somehow, and second of all, he feels comfortable to speak up before anybody else speaks up. Some of this reminds me really of Haman. Haman, Chazal tell us, was like the lowest of the advisors to the king, but he spoke up before everybody else. He speaks Lashon Hara to the king, which is what Doeg is about to do, and his Lashon Hara leads to the near destruction of the Jewish people, and here we're going to have his Lashon Hara leading to the destruction of a significant amount of Jewish people. V'yishal lo ba'Adonai v'tzeda natan lo v'et cherev galiyad ha'plishi natan lo. And he gets 2 out of the 3 right. First, he tells Shaul something that plays directly into Shaul's paranoia. David went to Nov, okay, and he asked of God over there, meaning there's an Urim V'Tumim there, because this is Shiloh, and David had direct access to divine instruction. This is the thing that has been eluding Shaul this whole time, right? We talked about part of the reason that his son is involved in divination is because God is not speaking to Shaul anymore. God is speaking through Shmuel to David. David has access to divine knowledge. Shaul does not, and that's a very unsettling thing for Shaul to hear, that this person who he assumes is now trying to rebel against him, not only is he doing it, behind Shaul's back, but he has God sort of, imprimatur. He's got God is giving him direction. That's a very scary thing for Shaul to hear. And also he gave him provisions, and he gave him the sword of Goliath. So they're in cahoots, right? That's essentially what Doeg is telling Shaul. Vayishlach HaMelech likro es Achimelech ben Achituv HaKohen v'es kol beis aviv HaKohanim asher benov v'yavo kulchem el HaMelech. So he calls for not just Achimelech, but all of the whole family. V'es kol beis aviv HaKohanim, they all come to Shaul. The time frame over here is a little hard, like to coordinate all of this. The way we read in the Psukim feels instantaneous. It has to happen over probably a significant amount of time. Vayomer Shaul Shamana ben Achituv, and whenever you call somebody by their parents' name instead of their first name, yeah, it's no good. Vayomer Hinini Adoni, and Achimelech shows up like completely innocently. Yeah, I'm here. What's up? Vayomer Elav Shaul Lama kashartem alai ata uben Yishai. Why are you and Ben Yishai conspiring against me? B'titchalo lechem v'cherev v'Shaul lo belohim lakum alai laorev kayom hazeh. And you gave him all this stuff, and you also asked God, to give him a message, and you did all of this to ambush me this very day. I know what's going on. V'yan Achimelech es hamelech vayomar. And Achimelech is completely dumbfounded. Umi b'chol avdecha kedavid ne'eman v'chatan hamelech v'sar el mishma'atecha v'nichba b'beitecha. I have no idea what you're talking about. David is a celebrity. He's a hero, right? As far as the public knows, David is the killer of all the Plishtim. He's the son-in-law of the king.
He's your number one guy.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about?
Right? He's the most trusted son-in-law of the majesty, obedient to your bidding and esteemed in your whole household. Hayom hachilosi lish'al, and there's definitely a play over here on Shaul's name. lish'alo belohim chalilali. Al yasim hamelech ba'avdo davar b'chol beis avi. Ki lo yada avdecha b'chol zos davar katano gadol. I have no idea what you're talking about. I have done nothing wrong. You don't find any fault with me or my father's house. I know nothing of what you're talking about. Vayomer hamelech mo tamut achimelech ata v'chol beit avicha. And here's kind of the hammer falls. You, Achimelech, and your whole father's house are going to die. I guess this is as good a place as any. Who is Achimelech? Well, actually, who's Achituv? That name we should know at least a little bit. Any takers? So Achituv comes from the family of Eli.
Oh.
So Achimelech, so Eli was the Cohen at the beginning of the book who messed up everything, and part of the curse of Eli was that your line is going to die out; it's going to be destroyed. This is the fulfillment of that. So Achimelech is the remnant. The only kid that was left was Ichabod, right? And Achimelech comes from that line.
Go ahead.
And now Achimelech and his whole line are going to be wiped out, with one exception.
Right. That's the thing, is that we know that there's a
we'll get to that. So the king says, let's put him to death. So the king says to the
runners.
Yeah, the runners standing. They have him as standing guards. The Ratzim is interesting because you have that in Esther.
Yeah.
Sobu v'hamisu kohanei Adonai ki gam yadam im David v'chi yadu ki barachu v'lo galu as azni v'lo avu avdei hamelech lishloch as yadam lifgo b'kohanei Adonai. Okay. Go kill the priest of God because they're in cahoots with David. They knew that he was running away. They didn't inform me. That's the instruction that he gives his officers, which the Koran Tanakh of the land of Eretz Yisrael will tell you is unique in all of ancient Near East. No king kills their own priests. If a new king comes to power, he'll replace the priest. He won't kill them. He won't kill them because they're holy. So you want to replace them, you want to retire the old priests and let them, go play golf or whatever, that's fine. But nobody kills their own priests. That's super weird and bad juju. Don't do that. And the servants know it. The lo avu avdei hamelech lishloach es yadam lifga b'kanei Hashem. The servants flatly refuse, which is also something that nobody does.
Right, you don't refuse the king's order,
Right, you don't refuse the king's order.
They're risking death by not doing it.
Exactly. So the king says, no problem. I have other servants. Vayomer hamelech leDoeg, and the king says to Doeg, who's the one that started this whole mess. Sovata upaga b'kohanim vayisov Doeg adomi vayifkahu b'kohanim vayamas bayom hahu shmonim v'chamisha ish nosa ephod bad. So Doeg does exactly what he's told. And he goes and he kills all the Kohanim of Nov, 85 people who were of the stature to be able to wear the ephod bad is the linen. It's a question whether that's the same ephod as what the Kohen Gadol wears. We're not going to get into the minutia, but he wipes out all the Kohanim of that line. V'yas Nov ira Kohanim he kalafi cherev, and he puts Nov to the sword. Meish v'yad isha meolel v'yad yonek v'shor v'chamor v'seh lefi charev. If this sounds familiar, it should, because
it's what he was supposed to do to Amalek.
Boom. And then this is what you were mentioning before. V'yimalei ben achad la'achimelech ben achituv u'shmo Evyatar vayivrach acharei David. So there's one kid who makes it out, and he runs away to David. His name is Evyatar.
So that's like what happened with Amalek.
Right.
One
One person that wasn't killed until he was eventually killed. But
wait, what is this like?
There's one person when they went to kill Amalek, Agag wasn't killed. What it also sounds like is the destruction of Shiloh, right? All of Eli's family was wiped out, with one exception who survived. And it doesn't say it in the Psukim, but I think it's fairly clear from what we've established. What just happened is unique in Jewish history. This is a Churban that was administered by Jews.
Right.
Shaul destroyed the Mishkan. not just like it's not just that we're killing off some Kohanim, as bad as that is, and their families, which is even worse. We've destroyed the Mishkan. The Mishkan has to now reconstitute later on. We'll see where the Mishkan is, but there is no Mishkan anymore because Doeg destroyed it. We did it to ourselves. That's scary.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened in Shiloh. The Mishkan was destroyed there too. Over here we have the very interesting halachic conversation, which we'll get to the end of the parak and then we'll do it. Over who's responsible for this? Who bears the burden for what just happened?
King Shaul or Doeg.
King Shaul or Doeg, or Vayagid Aviatar LeDavid ki harag Shaul et Kohanei Adonai. So Aviatar shows up and tells David exactly what happened, and David says it's all my fault. Vayomer David leAviatar Yadati bayom hahu ki sham Doeg hadomi. I knew Doeg was there. Ki haged yagid la Shaul, and I knew he would tell Shaul what's going on. Hanochi saboti b'chol nefesh beis avicha. I'm the one to blame for all the death of your father's house. Which I have to read this as hyperbole, because if he really knew all this, then why didn't he say something?
Why didn't he kill Doeg? If he's
Why
a
didn't he?
Dave.
What? Yeah,
I knew he was gonna say like it sounds like he's second guessing
right.
Man, I had a hunch and I did
right. Either kill Doeg, or you remember David has had time to go from Nov to Gath to Adulam, and then the Navi told him to go somewhere else, and he's got 400 people that have eventually over time he's had time to send one messenger to Nov and say, oh, by the way, Doeg was here, you might be in real trouble, maybe come join us or something, right? Shava iti.
Maybe he didn't think Shaul would have killed him.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
I mean,
right. By your own statement, this is beyond the pale for anyone.
Right.
Like not just the Jewish kings.
So. Right. Even if he knew, you're saying even if he knew that Doeg would say something, he didn't think it would escalate to this level. That's fair. Shava iti al tira ki asher yivakeshes nafshi yivakeshes nafshecha. Join with me. Whoever wants to kill you, they have to go through me first. Ki mishmered ata imadi. I'm here to guard you.
Also, because the Khan didn't even know. Like he said, I didn't even know that
right.
there was a problem with David.
Right.
So he thought maybe that would be good enough cover for him.
Yeah, Your Majesty, we plead ignorance. Yeah.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about this idea of Whither Malchut and who's allowed to be killed by the king and not allowed to be killed by the king. What the Rambam makes very clear is that if the king decides someone is Whither Malchut who has not violated anything to be chayiv misa, then the king is not allowed to just decide he wants to kill somebody. So it seems to me clear from these psukim that nobody.
Takes a lot of the fun out of being king.
Nobody in Nov, certainly not. Forget about Achimelech, but everybody else that's involved in the story in Nov is completely innocent, right? So then the king has no right to tell the servants or Doeg to kill these people, right?
Right.
But at what point, obviously the Navi anoints the next king, but at the point where Hashem's talking to David and not Shaul anymore, why isn't that the
right? Why
step of saying he's really the king and Shaul shouldn't be the king anymore? Yeah,
it's a very fair question. And David's been anointed, right? So maybe Shaul's not quite so kingly anymore. All I can tell you is that the people are still treating Shaul and continue to treat him even after this, which is really amazing, as king. So until the people decide otherwise, he has some sort of status as king. But the Gemara, and maybe we'll do it inside next time, the Gemara goes through a whole discussion of who these people were who refused the orders. And they were Aviasar, they were basically like the head of the army.
Was Benayahu among them?
No, Benayahu I think comes later.
Okay.
And so the question, putting aside the question of are they Whither Malchut for doing that, let's assume there is no Whither Malchut over here. That what Shaul did is give illicit orders and nobody has to listen to them. Then who's responsible for killing Nov? Any takers? Why? He did it, and he was Shaul's emissary. Shaul told him to do it.
Well,
so he's Shaul's shaliach.
If you're saying you have a duty to disobey an unlawful order from your commanding officer, but you fulfill it anyway, then you're responsible for it.
So the Gemara describes this as ein shaliach lidvar avera, right? You can't make somebody do an avera for you because they have a responsibility to listen to God more than you.
Right.
So if that's the case, then Shaul is not responsible for the death of Nov. Doeg is responsible, correct?
If Doeg's Jewish.
If Doeg's Jewish.
If not,
Even if not, he's still responsible. If a guy goes around and kills some people or does any avera because a Jew tells him
Right, if
to.
a Jew's like, I really don't
Right.
like that guy, you know, that guy Sal over there, you know, and then a non-Jew over here is, I really like this dude, you know, so I'm gonna kill Sal, like.
The reason we have to hold on to all of this conversation is because later on in about 14 prakim, we're going to reverse all of this logic when David has Uriah Hittite killed by someone else, right? And there we're going to say, well, David told him to do it, and so David is responsible, or maybe David's not responsible, but it's going to be the inverse. In other words, David learns this whole idea of, having your political enemies killed off from Shaul. And if Shaul is not culpable over here, then can David be culpable later on when we get to Uriah and Bathsheba? But I think that is enough for one night.
This is the end, beautiful friend. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you enjoyed this recording, please consider sharing with others or leaving a review. Thanks.